Steve, and it's amazing to me how many of our young children today don't know history, and it's frightening because if we don't know history, obviously, it's and the by the way, Steve, too, the current, I don't know how to say this, but the contemporaneous, I suppose, changing of history through edits in Wikipedia, for example. And how quickly.
You mean Wikipedia?
Wikipedia. There you go. I mean, see, it's interesting because people rely on Wikipedia as their online encyclopedia, but don't realize that it can be edited and the facts can be changed. And
even Wikipedia says it's not a reliable source of information.
Yeah. So, but there it is. So it's all tying together, and it's all coming together right now. You're right.
Well, again, one of the things that the Illuminists understand, the most powerful thing in the universe is that which God created, free will. There are people that will argue about free will, but free will is absolutely a foundational principle of both the Old Testament and the New Testament. If ye be willing and obedient, ye shall be, you'll eat the fat of the land, okay, in the Old Testament, And Jesus said, if you love me, obey me. But obedience to God is something that they've got to take away God, the God. And look, I know a lot of ancient history, okay? That's my passion. That's my hunger. That's the trying to keep relevant to a nation that forgot God. Just as Pharaoh, Joseph, when he was Pharaoh in Egypt until he passed away, then there grew up a generation that knew not Joseph. And that generation treated the Hebrews very, very badly, and obviously until God let them out. But even when God's people cry out to him, and God intervenes, there still needs to be a response. So I got to tell you something. We are literally in, how do I say, we're now in a place where everything that can be shaken is being shaken, and I call it the lullaby of madness, okay? When I remember my grandmother used to rock me when I was a little kid, and I have good memories, and sing a song to me on a porch in Iron River, Michigan, okay? By the way, Greg Evenson lived in Stambo, Michigan, for part of his time in there. And so the point is that a lullaby is something that's to be soothing. Now you have virtual lullabies. You have mind control. You have electronic mind control bombardment. And I'll tell you this, I personally will not be in a 5G network. If that's the only way I can be on the internet, mark my words, I'm gone. Because 5G is going to be the ultimate electronic net of total control over your DNA, over your thought processes, over your ability, your biorhythm, your circadian heart rhythm, and they are going to take over. And isn't it interesting? I call that the pentagram. When they are going to give you a 5G, okay, and let's just call it what it is, a electronic pentagonal prism, then I don't want to be in that. And Doug, we're already seeing all the health ramifications of not only Wi-Fi, but every form of smart meter, every deleterious effect. And I guess at the end of the day, how do you make the case? How do we make the case that, ladies and gentlemen, this is about your life, what you have left here, depending on your age, but more importantly, it's about your children. Are you really willing to basically sacrifice them on the altar of indifference, or, they'll have to work it out for themselves? They don't have the opportunity to work it out for themselves as you do, because that opportunity has been taken away from them.
That's right. Yeah, and I agree with you on 5G. I just don't know how it would become possible, by the way, to circumvent or not be a part of that, because is that not the generation of wireless that will replace what's currently going? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm asking.
Well, yeah, I guess what I'm saying is that if you have to have a router 5G, I'm not going with the router 5G, okay?
Right, okay.
I mean, I know what I'm saying. I have to stand my ground. So maybe that's what the Lord meant when he said, when I was asking him, Lord, do I get off the air? When do I get off the air? And he said, you won't have to worry about that. Decision will be made for you. And Doug, I think that was very astute on your part to bring that up. Well,
and that could apply in any number of ways. That decision, of course, could be made for you by way of the 5G that you're talking about, or, as we're seeing today, by way of the fact that we will not be permitted as conservatives, as Christians, to be on the air and to share our ideology. That's right.
Well, yeah, and the night comes when no man can work. Excuse me, was Jesus giving us a red letter warning? That means his own words, that we will not be able to work. So we've got to work, and that's what we're doing. Yet, I got to tell you something. I don't want to be a participant in talk show host tearing down Alex Jones, but I will say to the guy, because I know he will hear from this broadcast, that's such an act of cowardice, and by saying that those of us will be putting ourselves in harm's way, good night, sir. Get real. When you tell the truth, you are in harm's way, because the light, it shines out the darkness, and the darkness will do everything to smother the truth. And it's interesting because, Doug, I'm seeing guys basically losing it who are making statements like that. Alex is the tip of the spear, okay? And those of us who have been on talk radio alongside him, and look, I want to make something clear. I don't talk to Alex on a daily basis. I don't talk to Alex on a monthly basis. I'm busy. He's busy. Good night. The guy's got more energy than I can even try and attempt to define. But when I go on a show or when we take breaks, that's the only time I talk to him. So people call me. I'm just saying this for this reason. Say, well, call Alex and tell him this, tell him that. It doesn't work that way, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
And I thank God that listen, the videos that Alex produced in the early years on radio have been absolutely instrumental in probably waking up. My guess is 30 million people.
I would say that's probably a conservative figure, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yep. Yeah. Or let's just say this. Let's say it's a quarter of America's population, 75 million people. What do you think that he did it? And by the way, Alex is on record saying they're going to do this to me, and then when that doesn't work, they're going to kill me. And I pray against that. I pray against that because to me, look, I'm sorry, but I'm surrounded, okay, and to a large extent by very few people. My circle of trust has diminished greatly, okay? But I am also around a lot of people that are on, quote, prophetic, in the prophetic world, and they're, I got to be careful here. They have their own broadcasts and everything, but again, a lot of them that, are looking to get out of here at any time soon in the rapture, and I would say this, I'm on record as saying the tribulation has started, okay? I'm not bowing out. I'm not blocking out. I'm not taking a hit. When cannibalism, I'm not trying to cover my butt and say, well, I didn't really say that. Is it the Great Tribulation? I don't know, but I know tribulation has started because even Egypt, the stories today is Christianity is being destroyed, obliterated in the Middle East. It's being destroyed, obliterated in Indonesia. It's being destroyed worldwide. And even Putin came out today, and I agree with him, and that doesn't make me a secret Russian spy. He said the Pope isn't the defender of Christianity. He said, get out of politics and do what you're supposed to do. So the thing is that, and that is stand up for Jesus. Well, when the vicar of Christ, or, supposedly, the progenitor of Peter's throne, not the progenitor, but the recipient of Peter's throne, is throwing Jesus to the wind and is making all kinds of comments against Christianity, mocking Jesus, saying a personal relationship with Jesus isn't necessary and it's dangerous. Everything this guy has said, I would say this, man, what was he schooled in? The 14 rules of Lucifer? Because again, the thing is that people people have got to understand. Now, I have friends who are Catholics, and I have Protestant friends that have basically, what would they say, distanced themselves from me. So this isn't a Catholic Protestant thing. As a matter of fact, a couple of my friends who are Catholics, you know, are they love Jesus, but they also know that this Pope is the anti-Pope and that he's a usurper. But here's the point at the end of the day, and why I'm bringing this up. Because one of the things that people have to understand is mind control has always been present, even in the ancient cultures, okay? When I talk about the Egyptian Brotherhood, I'm talking about those who rule pretty much the British Isles. I'm not talking the contemporary Egyptian Brotherhood. I'm talking the Egyptian priesthood. And I'll give you an example. I'm going to quote this right now, okay? The mystery religions of ancient Egypt, Greece, India, and Babylon helped lay the foundation for occultism, meaning hidden knowledge. One of the earliest writings giving reference to occultism is the Egyptian Book of the Dead, a compilation of rituals explicitly describing methods of torture, intimidation to create human trauma, the use of potions, drugs, and the casting of spells, hypnotism, ultimately resulting in the total enslavement of the initiate. These have been the main ingredients for a part of occultism known as Satanism through the ages. That pretty well says a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think we're talking about the root, the core of all of the problems that permeate the world today and the United States today. I mean, it's really at its most basic level. It's good versus evil. It's God versus Satan, and even to the unbelievers, they've got, in at least in my mind, they've got to calculate that in some fashion. They've got to believe in that. Whether they describe it as, in whatever terms they use, it's got to be that basic and that severe. I don't know. That's just my thinking.
Well, you're correct, and let me give you another quote, Aldous Huxley, okay? And, when you're talking about this world, you're talking primarily about the Huxleys, Julian Aldous Huxley. You're also talking about George Orwell, who I quote quite what would I say? Many times I quote him. Here's a statement from him on the Committee of 300, and John Coleman, before he passed away when he was on talk radio, brought that to the attention of most people, the 300 families that rule the world. I'm quoting now, quote, Aldous Huxley, "There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorship without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will, in fact, have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing enhanced by pharmacological methods, and this seems to be the final revolution. Hello, the ultimate illuminist is telling you what there is going to do." I'm going to read it one more time, and I'll try and read it slower and with more clarity. "There will be in the next generation or so a pharmacological method of making people love their servitude and producing dictatorships without tears, so to speak. Producing a kind of painless concentration camp for entire societies so that people will in fact have their liberties taken away from them, but will rather enjoy it because they will be distracted from any desire to rebel by propaganda or brainwashing through enhanced pharmaceutical and pharmacological methods, and this seems to be the final revolution." Well, that sounds like good night. Prozac Nation? Hello. Birth control in the water? Emasculation? Hello. Xenoestrogenic castration? I don't think people are getting it, the birth rate, and now we've got sex with robots. So here, we'll wake everybody up. Sex with robots is going to be one of the most, how should I say this, alluring bait or traps that's going to be set for humanity. Because the reason this is going to be so provocatively evil is the fact that it's going to interfere with birth rates, okay? Human birth rates. And what people don't understand, and this is really critical to understand, is that sex has been the dominating force in the universe since the fallen angels didn't stay in their first estate. Believe me, it wasn't, well, how should I say this? It wasn't a knitting bee that the fallen angels went after, because they knew one thing. They knew when God created Adam and Eve, Adam first, and made for him a helpmate, Eve, that the procreation, the ability to do something that even the angels couldn't do, was given to humans. In other words, angels can't reproduce themselves, okay? They are, and I'm talking angels now, angels are one-time creations. Does that make sense to you, Doug?
Yep.
Therefore, they came from the realm, okay? They kept not their first estate, came into the human created world, and they wanted what mankind had because they thought they could recreate or continue on. Now, I'm talking about the rebellious angels, and of the one-third of the angels that fell with Lucifer, I say to people, where do you think those entities hang out? You know, it wasn't the original 200 that created, that fell on Mount Hermon and took from earth women wives as they would and produced the giants, and then that thing was repeated both before the flood and after the flood. But now the very, if you will, human seed is under such technological attack that, in essence, if God doesn't intervene, there will be no flesh left alive. At no point in history has a time ever existed when the words of Jesus in that statement, for the elect's sake, those days will be short, unless there be no flesh left alive. And isn't it interesting, the only question Jesus really didn't answer for us is that when the Lord returns, will he find faith in the earth? Well, and unless he does something, my answer to him is, Lord, not only do you know us, but I wouldn't bet on it. Now, someone says, well, you sure are taking that upon yourself. No, here's the thing. The idea is simply that we are at a point now where everything, God's revealing everything. He is the ultimate. Shall not the judge of the whole earth do right? And if the God of heaven is the ultimate judge in justice and mercy and forgiveness, but true justice, then he's going to lay out his case using the evidence. And if Donald Trump is God's prosecuting attorney, I can tell you this, nothing else has flushed these wolves out of their lairs, you know, and if the sheep want to just go quietly into the night and say, here I am, make me mutton sandwich or mutton burgers, then that's for them to do. But there shall be a group of men and women that will rise up, and they who know their God shall be strong and do exploits. This is such an important thing, Doug. It is by far the most succinct, the most objective, the most historically accurate presentation of mind control that has ever, and look, I've been at this stuff for a lot of years, but I've never seen this, and I go, wow, this is so well done.